And welcome to the 58th episode of Palmetto Politics. I'm Shannon Grady, and this is my co-host.
John Cummings, good morning.
Folks, we are excited. Today is Election Day. Now, please be aware, if you do not live within the confines of a municipality, as in you don't live within the confines of Myrtle Beach or Loris or Conway, then this election is not for you. It is for those individuals who do live within city limits or town limits. But they will be voting for city council, town council, and obviously there are some mayoral races as well. I do not believe that Myrtle Beach, the mayor is not up, and I'm not
No.
thinking that the North Myrtle Beach, I don't think Mayor Hattie's up either. But in Conway and Aynor, and I believe Loris, they do have mayoral elections today. So if you haven't voted early, because I think they had 2 weeks of early voting, if you did not vote early, today is the last day, and it is absolutely essential that you vote. So please go out and do your civic duty if you live within those areas and cast your vote for the candidate of your choice, or in certain cases, the candidates plural of your choice, because again, you've got city council members, town council members, as well as mayors. We had mayor candidate for Conway, Mr. Ken Richardson, on, and I attended the debate between Ken Richardson and Mayor uh, Barb Blaine Bellamy, and it was a very interesting, very eye-opening debate. And then I saw, John, a news story, I guess a couple of days ago, and I thought it was funny because these are nonpartisan races, which simply means that nobody runs as a Democrat or as a Republican. You're just essentially you run as a not a party member. But the news channel, and I think it was WNBF. I could be wrong, but anyway, she basically said Democrat Barbara Blaine Bellamy and Republican Ken Richardson are vying for mayor.
Right.
And I thought, well, she said the quiet part out loud. But to that end, John, I mean, at the debate, Barb said, "Hey, look, I'm a progressive." So what does that tell you, John? If someone says they're progressive, what does that kind of tell you?
Yeah, it just kind of hangs it right out there. And people aren't surprised. I mean, she's been mayor for a couple of terms now, and they know exactly what they're getting. And if they want to change, you can vote for Ken Richardson. I saw Ken make a really interesting point on a news show in that, if you want to improve infrastructure in Conway, and everybody wants to improve infrastructure everywhere, let's be honest. If
Right,
you want to
right,
improve infrastructure, you just can't do that at the municipal level. You need help from the state and the federal
right,
government, but in particular, the state. And
right,
he made the point where, hey, you know what? If I pick up the phone as mayor and I call Governor McMaster, he's going to take my phone call. I don't think it's the same for my opponent. And I thought that that was an excellent point to make. Ken knows a lot of people. He's been around a long time. Everybody knows and I think respects what he does and has great managerial skills. And obviously, I'm not going to say that the mayor doesn't care about Conway, but I don't think anybody feels about Conway like Ken does. He's been
sure.
there his whole life.
Born and raised, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
but I think that was such a good point to make is that if you're going to improve infrastructure, you need help. It's not going to come from the local coffers. It's going to come from the state coffers.
right.
And obviously they'll take Ken's phone call up there in Columbia.
Now, and I would even say, even if you want to talk to, say, county council to get their input on things, you're going to run into the same situation, because most of the folks on county council are Republican. And I'm not sad about that because I'm a Republican. So again, if you're going to ask for help when you have a divergent political ideology, it's very difficult to get people to get on board with you because you're not on the same page with them. So why would they support you? So I'm actually a little surprised that it's taken this long to get people to wake up and realize, you can't continue to vote just any way you want and think that things are going to turn out the way you hope. So to that end, there are some folks down in Myrtle Beach. My friend Stuart Bihar is running for city council there, so I wish him the best of luck today. I hope that he is successful in his endeavors. And Cindy Keaton, who is currently a council member in Surfside, is running for the mayor position there, and I wish her the best of luck as well. Now, of course, there's been a lot of heated rhetoric going back and forth in all of these various races. Um, we had some folks come to a candidate forum at the last HCGOP meeting that we had, and it was very enlightening in terms of understanding that a lot. In fact, I would say the majority of the individuals who came and spoke, first of all, thank them for doing that. But second of all, it's very clear to me that we have a serious crisis in the state of South Carolina. Now, I use that word specifically because Ken Richardson, for example, has said many times that Conway is at a crossroads. And so you have a guy like Paul Gable who says, "Well, what's the crossroad, Ken? I mean, what's the problem?" Well, I mean, listen, it's as simple as what we've been talking about for what the last 4 years. I mean, it's the reason Glenn Youngkin got elected. It's because we are at a crossroads. It's the crossroads of whether you're going to take the progressive left or whether you're going to take the conservative right. Do you want to continue to be a nation that believes that there are two genders, male and female, or do you want to become a nation that believes that there are multiple genders and that you can just not even have a gender? You can just be a spirit animal, I guess. I don't know. And they believe that parents have a right to speak out about their child's education, or do you want to believe that parents don't have a right? And in fact, if you attempt to speak out, you are a terrorist. So to me, John, I mean, I don't know where is the belief that we're not at a crossroads. I don't understand how you don't see it, John. I mean, help
Yeah,
me out here.
I think everybody sees it. And I also think that it's kind of a positive thing in that maybe this is what will get people involved in local elections. For years the problem has always been, oh, people say, oh, I only vote in a presidential election. That's the important one. Well, let's be honest. I mean, in most cases, except maybe in this case, the president probably has as little to do with your life as anybody.
Right.
But locally is where all the decisions are made that are really going to affect you on a day-to-day basis. And people don't get involved. Well, maybe this is the clarion call that will wake everybody up and say, hey, you know what? I have to vote in this election because, things are not going in the right direction. So maybe this will wake everybody up. It could be a positive thing. The fact that we are at a crossroads, maybe that's the stimulus that people need to get involved in politics, particularly on the local level.
Ford Church hosted an event, Faith Wins, and they had David Barton who came out and spoke. And if you don't know who David Barton is, just look up David Barton Wall Builders and you'll get all the information you ever needed to know. But he actually did the hard numbers and he said, listen, it looks like roughly 4% of the total population actually determine who is going to be your mayor or your city or town council. And so really that 4% then breaks down into 2% because 2% plus 1 is actually who determines who wins. So I hope everybody, the 98% out there is like, okay. I mean, then don't complain when your taxes don't go up, when the millage rate goes up, when the roads aren't being developed and built, when the schools are so crowded, when there's not enough school buses for the kids, when there's not enough law enforcement, when we don't have enough fire department. I mean, don't complain about those issues if you do not take an active role. And so you're right, John. People say, oh, well, the presidential election is what's important. Well, particularly in South Carolina and especially in Horry County, it's essential that you participate in the primaries because, folks, I mean, you just need to understand this. We are, thankfully, a Republican district, although we could talk all day about whether or not we actually elect Republicans, but we are a Republican district. And to that end, it's the primary that counts because whoever wins the Republican primary is going to win the general election. I mean, save some catastrophic, they commit murder or something. There's really virtually no way not to win once you've won the primary. So it is essential that you get out and get involved and be aware. So to that end, again, I cannot say enough, speak enough about the significance and importance of being involved in the election process. I had folks here in my community asking which candidates and so on and so forth. And again, I explained, well, first of all, we're not in a municipality, so it's not something that we specifically get to vote on, but that doesn't mean it doesn't matter. For example, I don't get to vote in the Conway races, but it definitely matters to me. And why? Because I have a business in Conway. So I have a small business that I own in downtown Conway. So it's absolutely critical that I get somebody in there that will hear my voice. And I've said many times, I've been open over a year now, and I have never even seen Mayor Bellamy walk down the street. Never. She's never graced my door. She's never made a phone call. She's never. So those are things that I feel like if you're the mayor, you should be front and center every time a new business opens. You ought to be there saying thank you for taking this initiative and spending the money to open a business. I mean, am I wrong, John?
No, you're investing in the community, and that's what the mayor. Those are the people that the mayor should be tending to. At least, if the mayor can't make it, have a representative come to your grand opening or whatever. That's something that they should be on top of because you have to obviously you have to file something with the city to open a business. So that's something that should be flagged right away that somebody's investing in the community, and those are the people that you want to be close to so that they can help you stay in office if that's what you'd like. But you want to attract new businesses, and the fact that seems like there's no outreach if someone opens a new business is kind of puzzling.
Yeah, I mean, the best I got was the Chamber of Commerce for Conway came, and attended, and I certainly appreciated that, but, let me just throw this out here, it wasn't free. I had to pay to
Right.
become a member of the chamber. If I didn't pay that money, they wouldn't have come. I had to pay to become a member of the, Downtown Alive. If you don't pay, they're not gonna come. And look, I understand that. I mean, that's a way to raise money, but again, if we really are focused on small business and we really care about those individuals who are gonna come with businesses, they should have been at my opening whether or not I was a member of their organization, if for no other reason than to say, "We'd love for you to become a member of our organization so we can do this, 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 and this to help your business." Not, "Well, we'll wait till she calls and gives us 250 or 500 or 1,000 or whatever dollars, and then we'll come out and talk to her." That that is not how you run an effective organization that is designed to help businesses in a town or city. And, so I'm very disappointed in that. But, now you're in are you in Myrtle Beach?
I'm no, I'm Myrtle's Inlet, so I
Myrtle's
have,
Inlet, okay,
yeah, we
okay,
don't have anything going on today.
okay, yeah. So, and folks, if you don't know, Myrtle's Inlet is kind of a divided location, if you will, because part of it is in Horry County and part of it
Right.
is in Georgetown. So it's a little wonky depending on where you live in Myrtle's Inlet. But,
Yeah, I'm in Ori, but it's
yeah, I know. Well, I know you're in Horry because you're in
yeah,
HCGOP. So
but
yeah,
it's really where we are is we're right on the border with Georgetown. So I mean, I can almost I was gonna say I couldn't drive a golf ball there, but it's not too much further than that. So
right. Now, if you are looking to become or get involved, and oh, thank you. Okay, let me throw these names out here. Paula Dolores Krill is running for Aynor Council as well, so I want to make sure we give her a shout out as well. Um, yeah, and I agree. Jeanette Spruill said that they gave us a golden ticket when they told their party affiliation, and I totally agree with you because I think a lot of people just if you're new, okay, let's just say if you're new, John, if you just moved here and somebody says to you, okay, this is Mayor Bellamy Blaine and she's been mayor now for 2 terms, and so we're just going to reelect her because everything's going pretty well. You might just, oh, okay, sounds good to me. But once you know what her political ideology is, it may make it a little bit different than for you to say, wait a minute, she's a Democrat. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not voting for a Democrat. So I think they did us a favor, and I agree with Jeanette that was a golden ticket telling us their party affiliation. 100% agree with that.
yeah,
So
and I'm quite sure that it wasn't done purposefully. I don't think the media would do that. So it was probably done by accident, but like you said, I think it helps Ken out tremendously that it went out that he's a Republican. I think everybody knows Ken's a Republican anyway.
yeah,
But
yeah,
there's nothing that says that you couldn't have two people that are affiliated with the Republican Party running against each other. But
yeah,
it maybe made people look into the current mayor's background, and they went, "Oh, wait a minute, you know, this
yeah.
isn't good for us." So it'll be interesting to see how it goes, and I wish Ken a lot of luck. I like Ken. Ken's a good guy.
Yeah, and here's a question, John. You kind of put on your civics hat for just a minute. What would be the purpose of having nonpartisan races? Why wouldn't we go ahead and have every race for political office be partisan? What would be the reason for not having them partisan? What's your thoughts?
I would have to look into the history of it down here, but I would imagine that at the time with small towns, they just figured we'd just have the best people run. Regardless of what their party was, and that was probably the way that they set it up. But now, let's be honest, everything's political now. It's much more than okay, my friends against your friends. It's more political now. So I think maybe eventually you'll see it go by the boards, and it'll be a partisan race. And look, all politics is partisan, whether the label is there or not. It's
Yeah,
all partisan, and it was created to be partisan. People aren't going to agree. There's no place where people agree on everything. So you're always going to
sure.
take sides. You just have to kind of walk that fine line to make sure that you don't have one party dominate everything to the point where there's no voices to be heard.
Yeah. What I would say is that and this is kind of just my thinking as I'm trying to grapple with why is it that it's nonpartisan and you and I have both run. So the first thing you have to do if you decide you're going to run for a Republican or Democratic seat, you have to actually file with that particular party, and then there's a fee involved. So, and again, I've never ran in a nonpartisan race, but I'm kind of curious since they don't file to run with a particular party, maybe there's no fee involved in that aspect, and so maybe that's like you said, you want to get people out to run. And maybe this is one way to encourage everybody to come out. Look, hey, there's no fee involved. You don't have to register with this party or that party. You just run. And maybe that's why, I don't know. But as you said, there is no way to really remove yourself from your political leanings just because you run in a nonpartisan race. Now, in New York, is that a thing?
Well, in New York, it's completely different because you actually have third parties, third party, fourth party, fifth party. The
Right.
way it works locally, very often is if you can get the endorsement of the conservative party first, you're the odds-on favorite to be the Republican nominee. Because even though the conservative party is a third party and relatively small, they do have a lot of sway with the Republican Party, and people who are Republicans see that you are the one that the conservatives endorsed, and then you're
Right.
likely to go to the general or you win the Republican primary because you got that endorsement. So yeah, it's a little different up there. And oddly enough, you're in New York, but the
Yeah.
conservative party has sway, even though it's very small. When you go back to not to get too crazy here, when George Pataki beat Mario Cuomo, which was one of the biggest political upsets of all time, no
Right.
matter where
Right.
you are. He did it because he got the full-fledged support of the conservative party, even though Pataki was kind of more of a moderate, but the conservatives came out and backed him big time. And if you look at the people who are registered conservatives, and you can register as a conservative, you look at the people who are registered conservatives, they were the difference in that election. That was the difference. That was the difference in the total, was the amount of people registered for the Conservative Party. And one thing about the third party up there is they get out and vote.
Yeah.
It's a small group and they get out and they vote. And sometimes, sometimes it's 2-3% of the vote, but guess what? That puts you over the top. So it is
Yeah.
different up
Absolutely. I've been doing my best to kind of get people involved and get them out and get them voting. Um, I, I can't honestly think of an excuse for why you don't vote. I mean, save come election day, you're desperately ill and you can't make it. I mean, there really are very, very few excuses for not voting.
there. They can't make it any easier. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's it's voting season. It's not even
Yeah. Yeah. You're right about that.
election day anymore. It's almost like Elmer Fudd and duck season, rabbit season. It's way too long. We've spoken about this before. I'm a big proponent of election day is one day, unless you have a
Mhm.
good excuse and you need an absentee ballot. That you send for and you get. That's yours.
Right.
I see no reason why we can't have it done in just one day and all the totals just tallied up and you find out 3-4 hours after the election exactly what the results are, unless it's really close and you need a recount. This whole election season thing is just undermined what election day is supposed to be, which is part of your civic responsibility. And it's also completely undermined the idea of community and elections, because we've spoken about this many times.
Yeah.
I would go vote and everybody goes, "Hey, John, how you doing? Your mother was here before. Your father was here before. We saw your sister." You knew everybody at the poll. You knew everybody.
Yeah.
When somebody walked in that people didn't know, people kind of chirped up and said,
Kind of
"Okay,
registered. Who's
maybe
this guy?
he's
He must be
new.
new.
Maybe this
Yeah.
person's new. Let's look at the list." But otherwise, I mean, what were the chances of going in and fraudulently voting when everybody at the polling place knew who you were?
Right.
It didn't happen. It
Right.
just didn't happen. And that's one of the reasons I think they've done that and gotten away and changed over to these big voting centers. You've completely undermined the idea of community in elections. And again, it's just one more way to open it up for fraud.
Well, did you see in the news? I think it was just yesterday, in fact, that they actually arrested some ladies who were ballot stuffing in a Democratic primary. And gosh, I can't think who it was, but they're actually going to rehold that primary. And
Well,
I
yeah,
thought,
there was in
that's
Connecticut.
exactly what they did in the presidential election. They were stuffing the ballot boxes. So why didn't we get to have another election in 2020? But
Yeah,
anyway,
and I give the judge a lot of credit. I think that was the one in Connecticut, and that
yeah,
was going on. And it's probably the Bridgeport one. And Bridgeport, let me tell you, Bridgeport is probably one of the most corrupt places in the country, Bridgeport, Connecticut. Because what happened
yeah,
years ago, the mayor, Joe Ganim, who's involved in this one, involved in this election, the mayor, Joe Ganim, won, and then he was indicted on bribery charges. They got an arena and a baseball stadium built. He got indicted on bribery charges, was convicted, served like 5 years, got out of jail, and then ran again and won. So it's the old, well, he's a crook, but he's
right,
our crook. He got things done. Well, he
Right.
got things done, and he padded his pockets at the same time.
Mhm.
But
Sure.
yeah, but the videos
Mhm.
that they showed the judge, and I've seen them, are
Yeah.
exactly the same as you saw in 2000 Mules, except
Yes,
except
that's what I said. They're
you
the
saw
same.
dozens and dozens and dozens examples of it.
Yeah,
So
and it killed me because I think one of the defendant, if you will, the guy who was saying, "Hey, I was rigged or I was cheated from
right,
the election." He said, "Look, only 400 and 20 people actually personally went to these boxes, but there were over 1,200 ballots. That's not." And I said, "Wow, we said the same thing in 2020." He went,
right. Like I said, I give the judge
"Wow,
a lot of credit. I really
yes,
do
yes,
for standing
yeah,
up. So finally, a judge who
yeah,
has the
uh-huh,
huevos to do it.
yeah,
I mean, nobody
yeah,
wanted to do it. That's the problem with the 2020 election. I think that's the untold story is that judges wouldn't touch it. They were afraid to touch it because they were afraid they'd lose their jobs in many cases. Nobody wanted to touch that entire thing, and that includes the Supreme Court. It does. They're gonna have to touch one of these Trump cases sooner or later. They've been afraid to do it, but they're gonna have to touch one sooner or later because the stuff that's coming out now is mind-boggling. I mean, this whole
yeah,
idea of the 14th Amendment. I mean, I don't want to get off the subject here. That
right."
whole thing is just
Well,
ridiculous.
we were gonna talk about that next because
Yeah.
you can't not talk about it. I mean,
Yeah.
he's in court, just about every day, and I know this judge, holy cow, John. Look, now, hey, full disclosure, everybody, I'm a Ron DeSantis girl,
Right.
but I'm here to tell you what they're doing to Donald Trump is just not
You-
just a miscarriage of justice. That doesn't even begin to cover it. But this judge is so radical, John. How in the world does he ever get a fair trial?
How does anybody get a fair trial anywhere? I mean, it's just insanity. When you look at the case in Colorado, the 14th Amendment case in Colorado, the
Yeah,
judge donated to a PAC that was against the January 6th defendants. And I mean, and then she said, "Well, I could still be bipartisan." What are you talking about? You could be bipartisan. You recuse yourself. Just get another
no,
judge. And that's the way it is everywhere. They stack the deck everywhere, and eventually, and that was my point. Eventually, a lot of these local cases, I'm sure they're going to convict Trump in New York. There's no doubt they're going
yeah,
to do it. It's a
yeah,
rigged game, like he says, and everybody says, "Oh, he always says it's a rigged game." This is a rigged game, and
yeah,
they're trying to strip him of his fortune.
yeah,
But all of this, eventually, the civil case, the quote unquote criminal cases, which now you see are just ridiculous because nobody's ever indicted him for insurrection because they can't and they know it. But
yeah.
all of those cases eventually will probably end up in the Supreme Court. But they're all just designed to tie him up during the election so he can't be out and
Mhm,
campaigning. That's all it is. It's election interference at its worst. But
mhm.
eventually, like I said, the feds, especially the Supreme Court, they're going to have to take one of these cases. Finally, 3 years after the fact, they're finally going to get involved when they could have just prohibited this whole thing from the beginning.
Right. It's interesting to me because this judge that we're talking about also gave the gag order and said, you can't say
Right.
anything critical about the judge, the prosecutor, any of the witnesses. One of the witnesses that they were calling at the time was obviously an opponent of his in the campaign, Mike Pence. And so, how do you? So then, if he goes and he says anything like "Don't vote for Mike Pence because he's da 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 da," well, oh, that's it, you violated. And of course, the judge did fine him. And I can't remember who it was, and forgive me for not remembering, but there was a gentleman. It might have been Levin, but I can't remember. Anyway, his point was, no, it was Dershowitz. That's what it was. Dershowitz. He said, and he's a Democrat, folks. So Dershowitz said, "Listen, this is wrong. This gag order is a blatant violation of the freedom of speech." And even Ted Cruz said the same thing. He said, "If this judge decides to arrest Donald Trump, and charge him with, violating the gag order and try to put him in jail," he said the Supreme Court would probably have to respond within hours
Right.
because you're going to put a former sitting president in jail, and all of his Secret Service agents go with him. I mean, it's asinine. So I kind of wish the judge had been stupid enough to pull that trigger because I would love to watch the Supreme Court drop a hammer. Boom! You don't have the authority to do that, judge.
Right. And this
And that judge should be disbarred.
It's all
So
coordinated. It's all
yeah,
coordinated. This
yeah,
whole and the whole case is just ridiculous. And I've seen President Trump's lawyers make this point. Who's the victim?
yeah,
There is
yeah,
no victim. because when they went back after the fact and looked at the estimates that were given, there's always every business person when they're filing
Right.
taxes to that extent, every business
Yeah.
person will have disputes with the government over the value of something. It happens
Sure.
every time. So
Sure.
then Trump borrowed money against the evaluation of his properties, and then he paid these banks back with
Hmm.
interest on the
Hmm.
new evaluations. So who's the who's the victim here? The
There's no
banks.
there there.
President Trump, or then Citizen Trump, got his money, right? There was a dispute about it, and he paid the banks back with interest. The banks didn't file this charge. Nobody filed
Right.
it. The government filed it. So there's no
Yeah.
victim. So where's the crime?
And I know there were several billionaires who laughed whenever they saw what the court alleged the
Oh,
Mar-a-Lago
yeah.
property was worth, and they said, "Listen, if that's the value, then we'll take 10 of them."
Right. Oh, yeah. That
Like,
whole thing
come
was, yeah.
on.
I mean, especially
Oh,
Mar-a-Lago, and that was
God.
the one that
Yeah.
leaked out. But
Yeah.
the other buried lead here is, New York is having tremendous problems keeping businesses in place anyway. Everybody's moving
Mhm.
because of the
Yep.
tax structure and everything.
Yep.
But when big businesses see what they're going after President Trump for, that's a common practice. Every business does that. Every business does it. It's just
Yep.
a fact of life when you're in business up there, particularly in a real estate market. You don't think they're going to run? They could do this to me. If they do it to him, they could do it to me. They could wipe me out and take away my entire fortune. Goodbye. I'll go to Florida. I'll go to Texas. I'll go to Arizona. I'll go
Mhm.
to somewhere else.
Mhm.
Go somewhere where there's no state income tax. And look, that seemed to be the move. Even Jeff Bezos,
Yeah.
he relocated from Seattle to Florida.
Mhm. Yep.
Here's a guy who, he even owns the Washington Post, for God's sakes. And they don't come more liberal than him, but he has his. He
Right.
doesn't care.
Yeah.
But guess where he's going? He's going to Florida. That's where
Right.
everybody's going. Florida or Texas, wherever anywhere they want to go, anywhere where there's no state income tax.
Right.
Simple.
Well, it's interesting, California is trying with Gavin Newsom to find some way that if you leave the state, they're gonna tax you anyway. They're gonna,
Right.
I'm like, good luck.
Good luck with
I don't
that.
think it's gonna work because I know most of the folks leaving that they would want to get their money because it's substantial. They have enough money that they'll tie them up in courts forever. They'll never get a dime, and they shouldn't. You can't penalize somebody for leaving your crummy
Nope.
state to go somewhere else that has a better tax structure
Yeah,
for
and
businesses and individuals.
constitutionally, I mean, the Supreme Court would have to step into that as well. And I guess the most amazing thing is that's what the framers were looking for.
Yeah.
That's why they gave the states so much power, because they knew, and this was a good thing, they knew that the states were in competition for population and for businesses. That has never changed. So they knew the states were in competition, and the states' responsibility was to try to make things attractive enough to bring people to their states. That has
Right.
never changed, not since
Right.
day one. I mean, Hamilton and Jefferson, they disagreed on just about everything, but they agreed on that if you
Yep.
made things a certain way, you're going to attract people to your state, and it's going to make the state more profitable and people in the
Mhm.
state more profitable. That doesn't change. And the fact that Newsom and all those other nut jobs out in California have tried to make it so they could tax people for leaving, that's just crazy.
Well, that I agree with everything you said, and that's why I think in South Carolina we have a lot of people coming. Everybody talks about Florida, they talk about Texas, but South Carolina has, whether it's on the coast or whether it's up in Greenville or York County, there has been a significant influx of folks moving from blue states into this red state. Um, Now, one of the things that I would note, we've talked about this, and I'm sorry if I'm kicking a dead horse, but it needs to be said again and again. It's great to set the table, as you like to say. That I love the analogy that you give. Set the table so businesses want to come here with lower regulation, lower taxes. Invite them to come, lower cost of energy
Lower
costs,
energy
etc.
prices.
Yes, but absolutely, you do not want to penalize people, and you don't want to penalize taxpayers who already live here by saying, listen, we appreciate the money that you've given to us, the state, and now we're going to give it to businesses not even from the United States, from Germany, and we're
Right.
going to entice them to come here. We're going to give them $300 million of your taxpayer money, and then another $1 billion of incentives to get them to come here. Well, they already wanted to come here. That real quickly, let me share this. I think this is a valid point, and it certainly plays into what we're doing. Goldfinch, and I've seen this, he wants to tax people for moving here. He said, if California and New York charge an exit tax, why can't we do a Yankee tax? Seriously?
That's the way Democrats think,
Yes.
I'm saying that
Yeah.
purposely. That's
Yeah.
the way they
Yeah.
think.
You're right.
And first of all, referring to it as a Yankee tax is probably not a good idea.
No,
Uh, no,
that's pretty insulting.
yeah, it really is, and
Might as well say damn Yankee, be done
right.
with it.
I mean, but that idea that you don't pay when you're coming in the door, I think we all know if you've moved from somewhere else, you have to pay taxes on your car down here, which you don't have to do that up in New York, although the registration fees are outrageous. There are plenty of taxes that you pay at closing, that you pay on your car.
Yep.
Obviously, you're paying if you're paying real estate tax, and if you're not here full time, you pay double the tax. There's plenty built in, and the fact that you're relocating down here and paying taxes.
Yep.
Why do you want to add an additional tax?
Yep.
People are paying enough taxes.
You want to punish people for moving to your state.
Right.
Uh, that makes the least sense of all. So, I would say this to Goldfinch: what would be the punishment tax for VW and Scout for coming
Right.
here? How much of a tax do we get back of that 1.3 billion that you very quickly said, yeah, let's get that money?
Right.
Because I'm telling you, as a candidate, I'm campaigning because I'm running for South Carolina State House District 61. And so what I'm asking businesses that I'm talking to is, what would you do with $1.3 billion? Most of them are kind of slack-jawed, and they go, what? Well, where would I get? Is this a loan? I said, no, it's not a loan. It's just the state just gives you the money. Just give it to you. And to the letter, every one of them has said, well, I'd pay off debt. I'd hire more people. I'd open up more businesses.
Yeah.
I'd franchise, et cetera, et cetera. And I go, well, unfortunately, you weren't the lucky one chosen. It was actually a German company that was chosen. And, I guess we gave that $1.3 billion to VW Scout because they're such a poor company. They don't have very much money, John. They're just a
No. No.
multi-billion-dollar company already.
Well,
So,
yeah, we did the math. I think maybe my math is no good, but if you
yeah,
took 30,000 business people and gave them all $50,000, let's see what happens. See how you build the
yes,
economy like that. Let me tell you, it'll
yeah,
create a lot more jobs than Volkswagen would, and they
yep.
would be spread out across the state. It wouldn't be all
I'm
in
gonna
one
tell you right
spot.
now, if they gave me $50,000, I could immediately hire 2 people
Right.
like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got people working for you right away, and then they, of course, guess what? They pay taxes
Yep,
because they're working. Gee, what a novel idea. But
crazy.
instead, and we all know that Volkswagen has already said that they're going to bring a lot of people from Germany to work here
Mhm.
for the company.
They always do. That's what BMW did up in the Greenville area. They brought most of their upper echelon, their management, came from Germany. In fact, even those I've got a good friend, I've got 2 good friends that are in management at BMW, and they have to go to Germany to get their training. So, they're constantly flying over to Germany. So it just kind of tells you. And look, I'm not opposed to having businesses come from other countries. Don't get me
Not
wrong.
at
Don't
all.
misread me on that. I think that's great. I think BMW is great. They make a good car. I like VW. They make a good car. The problem I have is giving them our tax dollars to do so. That I have a huge problem with that. That is not okay.
Right. I always say,
Not okay.
right, the government's job is to set the table. It's not to pay the bill.
Mhm. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, just set the
So
table so people can come in here, make it as attractive as you can, have a
yeah,
good
make set the
workforce,
ambiance.
have a
Yeah, yeah.
well-trained workforce. And the other part of this that we've talked about is the energy costs. Right now, energy
Mhm.
costs are very reasonable here, and that's why people come here.
Yep.
But we've talked about this. When you see what they have on tap, the energy prices will not be good for long. You go 10 years out with the plans that they have in place,
Mhm.
all of that goes right out the window.
Yep. Well, and the latest, first of all, the VW Scout is going to be an EV or a battery operated car
Mhm.
production facility. And so now there are multiple stories coming out, cases and studies saying, it actually looks like these EV are not as cost efficient as we had initially said. And in fact, they're going to be more of a drain than they are a benefit. Well, duh.
Yeah, we
Like,
kind of all knew that.
yeah, they actually had a photograph of the largest charging station in the country. And of course, can you guess how these charging stations were powered? John, want to take a
Uh,
guess?
uh, maybe diesel or coal.
Diesel generators. Yes,
Diesel.
they were powered by diesel generators. You can't make this up.
No,
You just cannot make this up. It is just,
it's a great supplemental. That's what it
yeah.
is. It's a
Yes,
supplement. You
yes,
can't. I mean, it's certainly helpful, and if people want to do that on their roofs and stuff, I totally get that.
yep,
And I'm not a fan of the windmills at any level.
at
At
all.
any
Yeah, I
level.
agree.
They're
Not good for
bad
the
for the,
environment, not
they're
good for
bad for the
animals.
environment. They're bad for the ocean.
Yep.
The amount of birds that they've killed
Mhm.
is unbelievable. And then what do you
Yeah.
do with them when they wear out? What do you do with all that metal?
Yeah.
What do you do with
Oh,
it?
geez.
So
They take up a massive amount of space when they dump them into, various
it has nothing
trash.
to do, yeah, nothing to do with the environment whatsoever. The people who say
Mhm.
they're environmentalists and they're fighting oil and gas. Meanwhile, what they're putting in place might be more damaging. And I think the story that really told everybody that this was going to be a lot slower process than they thought. I mean, they're talking about getting rid of everything by 2035, which is just
You're
insanity.
right. It's insanity.
Was that what was it? Chevron bought out Hess, and
Yeah.
that's because they want to get all their oil and gas things into place. Particularly if if the Republicans take back the White House, it's going
Mhm.
to be drill baby drill no matter who gets in.
Yep.
And they have to be ready for that. And I think that that's why that company did what they did,
Yeah.
because we need to be drilling. And you know what? If we're drilling and we're at full capacity, I bet you what's going on in the Middle East right now wouldn't be going on.
Hey, 100% agree with you, John. I mean, that is you spot on. In
Yeah.
fact, I was thinking the other day, because I know I'm gonna say this, and I know I'm gonna upset some of my friends and maybe even a few of my supporters, but I'm gonna say it anyway. There is a big contention of folks, libertarians, who believe that we should have wholeheartedly a non-interventionist position. We should not get involved. Let's go back to George Washington. Avoid foreign entanglements, and I agree with that in large measure. But let's just say right now that we started practicing that policy. We stopped sending money to Israel. We stopped sending money to Iran. We stopped all money that goes out stops, and we just take care of our own, and we don't get involved. John, do you think if we ceased and we pulled back all of our carriers, all of our military positions, we pulled back all of our forces from overseas, we moved our bases, do you think the world would be safer if we did that?
That's a great question. I know that I think Israel could take care of themselves because that's how they're set up. I mean, obviously, you know that they have mandatory service in the military. I mean, we've all seen the map. That tiny little dot is Israel, and they're just surrounded by people who
Mhm.
don't like them, hate them, whatever. Um, I don't know if it would be a safer place, but it would be a different place for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
I
as
mean,
far
literally, we
yeah,
have no overseas. We have no bases in Japan. We have no bases in South Korea. We have no bases anywhere in Europe, not Germany, not Syria, not nowhere. We have no overseas bases, period. We pull everything back to within the 48 contiguous and the two
yeah,
states,
put it on
Hawaii
the
and
border.
Alaska, and that's it. And yeah, we focus on our border, and we do not. I don't think that would go well. I think we would see the Russians get giddy, and we
Yep.
would see Iran be like, and I just think it would be World War III for sure. And then it would just be a matter of time before we got drug into it because so to that end, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I don't know the answer. Now, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I know the answer. And I certainly do not agree with just infinite amounts of money going into these foreign entanglements. I'm going to use George
Well,
Washington's
yeah,
word
and
again. I don't agree
especially
with that. Yeah.
we have this history of playing both sides. That's we're in it from both sides,
Yeah.
and that's because of the difference in policy. With the exception of President Reagan and President Trump, who believed in strength by power. You're
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah. So I carry a big stick.
build up the military, and people will listen, and we'll try to stay out of foreign entanglements by that. I heard a
Yeah.
very interesting conversation yesterday that pointed out the fact that, and this even goes back to Bush with James Baker and Scowcroft, and then Obama did the same thing, and now Biden's doing the same thing, which is just Obama 2.0, and that
Mhm.
is they believe that the way you keep peace in the Middle East is to balance the power by being nice to the Iranians, meaning that you give them funding, you lift the sanctions, and the fact that both of them
Yeah.
would
What's that
be
gotten us?
equally powerful, and that the Iranians could even have a nuke, have a nuclear program, that will balance the issue in the Middle East because they're both strong countries and they'll leave each other alone. You couldn't be more short-sighted, but that's the way they see it.
You're
And
right. You're right.
Trump didn't see it that way.
Right.
And the other thing that Trump did, that Reagan was really the same thing. although Trump was probably in a better position than Reagan because Reagan always had a Democrat House and Senate, was that you have to make sure that your allies are strong as well. So you think about when Trump was in India, they love Trump, right? India was big. Japan was big. Australia was big. Brazil was big. We were lining up all of our alliances, and rightfully so, and made sure that they were successful. We were trading with them, and that's how it worked. Now look what happened. India is throwing in with the Chinese, right?
Yes.
Australia went completely off the beam during the pandemic. I don't know where they are, right? Brazil went the other way because they probably stole
All in the BRIC.
there.
Got
Saying
Brazil, Russia, India, China, and then we got South Africa. We got you're
they're
absolutely
all
right.
lining up against us because and I said this during my campaign: pick a side because this is what we got to do. Find out who your allies are, and make sure that they're as strong as you are, and that they're all on board. Well, now who's our ally? Seriously, who is our strong ally? NATO's a waste of time right now. Waste of time.
Oh my God. So is the UN. United Nations has been a waste of time.
Yeah. And Trump was right about all of it. He wanted NATO to pay their bills, and he wanted to get out of the UN. But
right, I do too.
But that's the whole thing, is that when you have people like Obama, Biden, who believe that the way to make it even is to give money and the ability to get nukes to the Iranians who would like to nothing better than to destroy the United States, and then add the open border where we have thousands and thousands of terrorists coming in over the border. We are in a very bad spot, and it's been done purposely.
Well, it's funny you should say that because that brings me to a post that I had a friend put up on Facebook, and I guess it was a post that was supposed to sort of challenge us in our thought process. But I'm going to share that with everybody so they can kind of see this, and we'll talk about it. It says, you watched the Hunger Games and sided with the resistance. You watched Divergent and sided with the resistance. You watched Attack on Titan and sided with the resistance. You read about history and sided with the resistance. When it's fiction, you understand oppression. Why do you refuse to see it when it's reality? And of course, this is directly targeted at people who are opposed to what happened with Israel and Hamas. And we need to say Hamas and Hezbollah and a lot of these other organizations surrounding Israel are all funded by the Iranian mullah, so it's not like Iran doesn't have their sticky little fingers in it. But John, my thought process is, people say one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. When you attack civilians and you put a baby in the oven, you gouge out the father's eye, you cut off the fingers of a 6-year-old boy, you cut off the leg of a 7-year-old girl, you cut the breast off of a woman and place her baby, let her stay, she's still alive, that you don't kill her. You put her baby in the oven and turn it up on high so she hears the baby screaming as it's being cooked to death. That's not resistance, folks. That is not resistance. That is terrorism, evil, pure and simple. And it cannot and should not be tolerated from anyone.
Yeah, and the other part of that is you could give the Palestinians, whoever they may be, you could give them their own state tomorrow, because look, they've done it how many times? They gave them Gaza and pulled out completely. Israel was completely out of there. And what they do?
Since
They
2005.
set up launching bombs out of hospitals and schools.
Well, yeah, they
Right.
elected Hamas, and they spent all of the money that was given to them by the United States and other countries building this network of underground tunnels.
Yeah.
They were donated, millions of dollars worth of pipes to build water and infrastructure for the people. And instead of doing that, they turned them into projectiles and missiles that they could use to launch against the Israelis. So they don't want to be at peace. They have no interest, and it's in their founding doctrine that they are going to kill every Jew. I mean, they really love this thing of, they want the rocks to cry out, hey, there's a Jew hiding behind me, come kill him. And they teach their kids. I had somebody on Facebook say, well, I have friends who are Palestinian and they do not teach their children that. I'm like, well, you're a liar and the truth's not in you, because every school in the Palestinian region, this is how they teach. Let's just take math as an example. They say, okay, you have 10 Jews and you kill 6 of them. How many Jews do you have left?
Right. And the answer would be too many for them.
Too many, exactly.
Yeah.
4 too many.
If you gave quote unquote, like I said, the Palestinians, if you gave them their own state tomorrow, nothing would change. Nothing would change. They would continue to lob bombs into heavily populated areas in Israel. Now, look, they've been through this. This is the third war with quote unquote war with Hamas, right? This is the third one. This is going to be the last one. This is going to be the last one. They have no choice. I mean, There's been 5 different, if you go back in history, there's a great video on Prager. 5 times in history, going all the way back to World War I, when they've offered a 2-state solution. And all 5 times, the Palestinians have turned it down.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Because a 2-state solution means Israel gets to exist, and that is paramount. That's against
Right.
everything they believe. Israel
But they
cannot
don't want
exist.
that. No.
To that end, you got Biden saying, okay, we're going to send money to Israel to support their replenishing the Iron Dome, but we're also going to send $100 million to Palestine, to the Gaza Strip. And then when they're questioning, well, that money is just going to get taken, and those supplies and everything will get taken by Hamas. They go, well, we know that's probably likely to happen, but we're still going to do it.
Yeah, right.
You're just perpetuating the extension of this conflict. If you stop supplying them, this war would be over pretty quickly. If you continue to supply them, it is going to elongate the war and add to the misery of the people that are being controlled and dominated by Hamas. Now, they've made it no secret that they do purposely put civilians in harm's way because they want dead civilians. They want dead people in hospitals. They want school children killed. They use ambulances to move their terrorists around. They violate every single Geneva rule that exists for war. But you have these college students who are stupid, and they are led astray by ignorant professors who are racist bigots, and they believe that they are actually on the right side of things. You could not be further from the truth.
Right. And
I
then
don't
you
know how
have
we
this,
fixed it, John.
I don't know. The other thing is, with the history of Hamas and Hezbollah in Latin America and in Central America and in Mexico, assisting with the drug trade, the international drug trade, and with digging tunnels under our border. I mean, that's all part of this equation.
Yeah, they've come and trained the Mexican cartel how to dig the tunnels.
That's
They
right.
use their knowledge that they've acquired in Israel, or in the Gaza Strip, to come here to South and North America and teach them, hey, this is what you do. This is how you get there. You get there, you dig these tunnels.
Yeah. They're all in on the international drug trade. All of them.
We're funding our own destruction, John.
Yeah.
The Americans are funding our own destruction.
And then the border, I mean, what's going on the border now, people, I don't want to see people impeached. I want to see people go to jail. That's what I want to see. What has gone on down there is beyond outrageous, just beyond outrageous.
Mayorkas should be under the jail. They should dig a tunnel under the jail, and especially put folks like Mayorkas should be in that. That's what.
And I have another problem with everybody that's in Washington. So everybody needs to listen up. Republicans, Democrats, doesn't matter. If you stopped funding the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations, Catholic Charities, that Lutheran group, all of these quote unquote religious base, they are making a fortune trafficking people. They're trafficking kids, they're trafficking adults, they're trafficking everybody. They are working with the cartels to bring people into this country illegally, and they say, well, it's humanitarian. No, it's not. You're making a fortune, right? You're making a fortune. And if, at
the cost and expense of children.
Exactly right. Exactly right. If you stop that money tomorrow, guess what? This would all stop.
Yeah.
Well, it all stopped. And then you took that out, put some troops on the border, and it all goes away. They all go back.
Yeah.
And you know what? Trying to get these people out of the country after this is all over is going to be really difficult, because it's look, folks, it's not 8 million people. It's not. It's way more than 8 million people. It's way more than 8 million people. I can tell you this anecdotally. There's probably 2 million illegals in New York City.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about that for a second. Ted Cruz, who made a great point on his show the other day at The Verdict, and he said, we currently have more illegals who have come into this country than the population of 34 states.
Right. That's just under Biden. Right. That's under Biden.
That's under Biden, absolutely. So we are being outnumbered, soon 2-1. And if folks don't think it's a serious crisis, you're not paying attention. And meanwhile, you got Joe out there saying, Biden fixes working just because you have to pay, $10 for a box of cereal. Everything's great.
And to watch the news, MSNBC, CNN, whatever, to watch these people, these talking heads, knowingly lie, just makes me sick. Where is your conscience, man? Where is your conscience? They know they're lying. They know they're lying, and they're all in on it, and they get paid very handsomely to lie. And I bring this up sometimes, and people get upset with me, but Alex Jones, right? And the whole Sandy Hook thing, right? Alex Jones believed that was a setup There were a lot of problems with the news that day that I don't even want to get into. But if you remember, they went from there was 3 shooters to it was his brother to he killed his father in Jersey. But there was so much misinformation that day that it left it wide open for conspiracies. You could see it. I
Sure.
remember seeing videos on CNN of them trailing 3 people running up a hill away from the scene saying that these are the 3 guys. So everything that they put out there was wrong. So whatever you think about Alex Jones and saying that this was all a conspiracy and he hurt people, all right, he hurt people by saying things that were probably untrue, right?
Hmm.
What about the media?
Yeah.
What about the media? You bankrupted Alex Jones, fined him
Yeah.
$1 billion. The media knew that Russian collusion was fake. They ran with it. They knew that there was issue with the where COVID came from, but they ran with it. They knew that everything against Trump was fake. They knew that there were problems with the vaccines. They lied. They lie about everything. And guess
Yeah.
what? There's
They
no
knew that the
accountability.
laptop was real and they said
Right.
it was
They knew
fake.
that
Russian
absolutely. And
disinformation.
there's no accountability. Yet Alex Jones looks seemingly off the beam on one story.
Hmm.
People got offended and got hurt. There's no doubt about that. There was suffering involved. But $1 billion and you do
Yeah.
nothing to hold the mainstream media accountable for what's going on in this country, what's going on in this world, it's beyond outrageous.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I tell you what, I have to find myself not watching the news very much because I get most of my information from podcasts because I can't watch it because it just my blood pressure goes.
Oh yeah, when I watch Bannon, I watch Steve Bannon all
Yeah.
the time, and he always opens with cuts from MSNBC and CNN, and he does it and he says it. I know it's hard not to turn off. I understand it, but you have to know where they're coming from.
Yep.
And I sometimes I
That's a
can't take
help.
it. I can't take it with as he calls it, Morning Mika and Joe Scarborough, and it's people make me
Yeah.
sick. They make me sick
Mhm.
because they know that they're lying. Although I don't know if Joe Scarborough's smart enough to know he's lying, but I know Mika is. I know she's smart
Yeah.
enough. But I mean, come on, it just how could you take a check to get out there and lie about, and I mean everything. They lie
Mhm.
about everything, and it's all coordinated, which is just mind-boggling. And I've said for a very long time that the biggest threat that we face as a nation is a complicit media, and it's the truth. They're destroying this
Yeah.
country. We need to dismantle the media. What happened to FCC licenses? What
Oh,
happened?
that doesn't matter
What
anymore.
happened to that? Doesn't matter anymore. You can lie all you want. Now
Yeah.
nobody's
You
saying
know,
that it's not freedom of
it's
speech, but come on.
it's funny you should say that because I remember there was a time, and it was back in the late 70s, early 80s. I was young, but I remember this that if you put something on TV, you said, I've got a miracle detergent. It takes out blood, mud, whatever. And if it didn't do that, you got penalized for that. They wouldn't let you run a commercial anymore.
Yeah,
And so you had to be very careful about how you said it. The number one, whatever. Well, it better be number one. You better be number one in something. You couldn't just make that claim without having something to back it up. That's gone to the wayside now. You say whatever, everything's open, lie, we don't care. Um, I don't know how we fix it. I don't have all the answers. I just know that what we're currently doing, passing the buck, continuing to kick the can down the road, is not the right answer. It is not the right answer. And that's one of the reasons why it is important. Again, today, folks, this is election day. So please, if you're in one of these municipalities, anywhere in the state of South Carolina, anywhere in the sound of our voices, please go vote. Please go vote. And if it takes you 20 minutes, and that shouldn't take you more than 20 minutes, look these people up online. You can Google them, see where they stand on the issues, and then go vote accordingly. Because if we don't do that, we are going to continue to see our country deteriorate to the point that we're soon not going to recognize it at all. And John, I agree with you. I think Ted Cruz has said it. Multiple other folks have said it. We are absolutely. It's not a matter of if we get hit. It's just when. When
yep.
are these terrorists that have come into our country? These Hamas terrorists, Hezbollah, the Chinese terror, all of these folks, they're in this country. It's not, well, maybe, no, they are. They're here. We know they are. They've caught a few Iranian terrorists at the border. I think, what, they catch 4 the other day? So they caught 4. So just from odds, John. So what is it? Let's say for every, so we found 6 million. There's about 2 million we know are known gotaways. Now, let me explain to you what a known gotaway is. Here's a known gotaway. They're grabbing 4 people, and a 5th person runs away, and they see that person run away, and they can't get them. That's a known gotaway. What about the other 2 that they didn't see?
Right.
They
Oh,
got away.
there's plenty more than 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't even put
Yeah.
a number on this, but it's the real tell here is that this is a well-funded, well-coordinated effort that our tax money is supporting. That's the outrage. And people, they're just, I don't know what the issue is. We need to stand up, before it's too late. I mean, like you said, this terrorist attack is coming. I was very nervous, although it was early in this process. With my background, I was very nervous about the World Series. I was very nervous about it. And if you know anything about terrorist attacks in general, they like to attack on odd numbered months in odd numbered years. That's just, I know a lot of this stuff. That's when they like to hit.
Yeah.
So I was very nervous about a lot of these dates, like today, 11/7/23. I mean, it's all odd numbers, and here to boot, extra one, they're all prime numbers. There's a whole thing with
Yeah.
I don't even want to get into the whole numerology thing about it,
Yeah.
but this is coming, and I think something's going to happen before the end of the year, especially because it's an odd numbered year. I'm just really nervous about it. I would watch major sporting events. I don't think it's going to be one. I think they'll be coordinated, and of course, we have far too many people in law enforcement in this country who are looking at domestic terrorism, which means us.
White man.
Right, which means
And
us,
parents.
which means parents, which means people who are involved in their school boards, which means people who are Trump supporters, which means people who are conservatives, which means people who are Second Amendment people. Who they're watching, Catholics who go to Latin mass. Yeah, right. We'll keep an eye on them, but we're not going to watch Hezbollah and Hamas and all these sleeper cells in this country. I mean, just you got to get your head out of the sand, and people need to see this for what it is. It's coming, like you said. It's just a matter of it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
It's funny you said, because they had Mayorkas and some other folks that deal with the border. They had them in before Congress, before the Senate. They had some hearings, and Ted Cruz was asking some questions. And it was laughable because they were asked, how many people do you think have come across the border, and how many of those were likely to be terrorists? And one of the responses that was given was that, listen, we do everything we can to make sure at our border locations and our crossing points that we make sure that we vet people that come across, and we're very careful. It's like, okay, so you're talking about the actual literal crossing points where we actually have border patrol, and there's a facility for you to come in, like in El Paso. There's a border crossing there going into Juarez. That's not where the bad guys come in. And it's also really critical that under this administration, what they've said is, if you come here and you go find a border agent, and you say, I'm here and I want to seek asylum, they have to see you in and give you the keys to the door, if you will. Okay. So there is absolutely no reason that a person who's coming here to do good things would not seek out the Border Patrol, because they're not sending you back. The only people, John, who are running and fleeing from Border Patrol are people who are not coming here with good intentions. They're
Right.
people who are coming here with bad, evil intentions. And so that's the problem that folks need to really find it hard to sleep at night. You better
Yeah.
make sure you are trained to use your weapon.
Even if you do get stopped by the Border Patrol, what vetting process are they going to do? Most of these people are from countries that we do not have diplomatic relations with, and many of those countries don't have records. They just don't have reliable records. So how are you even going to vet these people? The other part of this is the Biden regime eliminated the DNA testing, which took next to no time at all. And at least that kept kids with family members, because most of the kids that are coming in are with adults who are not family members.
Right.
But there's no way to prove that. When you had the DNA testing, you had it. It took 20 seconds. And they got rid of that. So it's all you need to know is that this is all being done purposely. It's well organized. It's well funded. And we, the people, are paying for it. And it needs to stop.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting to think about kids being put into slave trade. Sound of Freedom is now available. If you haven't seen that movie, it's available on Prime. You can rent it. You can buy it. I encourage you to see it, despite the situation with Tim and what he may or may not have done. The premise of the story is still very, very important for folks to know. So, folks, there's a lot going on. Again, please be involved. Please know who is running for the mayor, who is running for city, who is running for town council across the state of South Carolina, and go out and vote like your life depends on it, because, folks, your life depends on it.
Yep.
The next election that will basically involve everybody, the first one is February 4th. That is a Democratic primary. And it'll be interesting to see if Joe Biden's still in there, because there's some serious concern. David Axelrod came out the other day and said, this guy needs to step down. He's not where he should be.
Well, they saw those poll results.
Oh yeah, they knew it was bad. And then the next one is February 24th, and that is the Republican primary here in South Carolina. So both of those are on Saturdays, which I'm glad about that because I think it's good. It gets more people out, a lot of people out of work. So those are the ones that are coming up. And then the next primary is June 11th, and that is for congressional races, for state house, state senate, and other races like that. So please, if you're not registered to vote, you still got time to do it. You have 30 days before the election to get registered to vote if you're new to the area. I can't encourage you enough to get involved. And if you have any questions or concerns, want to know how to get involved, want to know where to go vote, want to know where to register to vote, whatever your question is, you can always email us, message us, go to our page, go to our text, go to our Twitter, whatever you want to do, and we'll certainly be happy to answer those questions. But folks, that's all I've got for today. John, anything else you want to part with?
Nope, nope, we hit it all.
Yep, folks, just be ready and pay attention. Keep your head on the swivel. Thanks so much for watching. As always, God bless, Godspeed, and we will see you next time.